The film begins in 1975, where we see an orphanage in Spain, where those children are kept who have no one in this world. There was a little girl named Laura who was playing with her friends. Now after some time someone adopts Laura, and we see the time period 30 years later in the story, where Laura got married and now lives with her husband and 7-year-old son Simon. Recently Laura repurchased the orphanage where she spent her childhood because she wanted to restore that place to its former glory and adopt some special of them. The family shifts there. Now one day when Simon is playing in his new home, i.e. orphanage, tell his mom and dad about his friends. He said that they are my invisible. Now his mom and dad thought that imaginary friends. So they ignored Simon's words. Laura takes Simon to see their cave in the seaside. Then goes inside alone to check it out thoroughly, while Laura stands outside waiting. And Simon doesn't come out for a long time. Laura goes inside to look for him. There. But when Laura checked, she found the children there. Nothing is found except foot. Simon found a lot of throws shells so that follows the shells to their. The next day an old woman. She says that I am a social worker and also work as a. Laura brings him inside the house. The social worker talks about Simon and shows Laura his file. Simon is not their biological son but their adopted son. She tells me Simon, even before that he had a disease which I was treating. Now being. But Laura refuses, saying that my husband himself. The treatment should be done at home under our supervision and not by going outside. Social worker and sends it from there. When Laura checked the file to report was positive. Now Laura didn't want Simon adopted son and has some disease. So Laura hid the file in a locker in the cupboard and kept the key with herself. Laura woke up to a loud noise. The sound was coming from a shed outside their house. That there is a social worker there who is searching the shirt as if there is something. Laura got worried and quickly woke up her husband and told him about this. To check, but by then the social worker had left from there. Next morning when we opened the door, we found shells lying outside in a lot. Which Simon dropped on his. Tells Laura about his 6 friends. He tells me that all of also become like them and then forever. I will stay with them. Simon's drawing where he has shown them to her. Pictures of made. One of them was even wearing a mask. Had something or the other in their hands and Laura shows the drawing to Simon and asks. In their hands. Simon says that my friends steal things from others. And he gives the thing to the owner with the help of some gestures given by the to be searched. If any person finds her thing with the help of clothes. One wish of that person. This is a game and I too play that game with my friends. Coins that my friends have hidden somewhere. Is it a game and agrees to support Simon because to play with me, and after setting up all the closes he himself. The coins must have been hidden somewhere. Now through the clothes then in the garden, then into the kitchen, at the end key, which was in the same cupboard in which file. When Simon he finds his coins hidden in the pages between the file. Simon is happy after getting the coins, but from him and starts scolding him. And says that I already know that I am your adopted. I have a disease and I will die soon. Yes. She asks the cheeky Simon. Simon then says that the garment Thomas wore at his mass was completely shocked and upset after hearing this from her friend. The next day a party is organized for the special adopt. When she comes to invite Simon to the party, refuses to go with me, saying that you should come with me to Thomas's house. I cannot go, son. There is a party at home. Now Simon becomes more stubborn. But later he felt sad too, but Simon got it. After a while, when Laura tries to convince him, we're in the house. Then a child is seen standing and mask. Was just as Simon had made Thomas in his drawing. As Laura begins to cut his meat, the kid closed the door to lock it. She started screaming in pain. Her husband immediately came there. He opens the door. There was still no trace. Started looking for him. In every room, big or. But when she realized he was, she went to the beach to look for him. She begins running to the cave, passing through the ocean. But before she drowns, arrives just in time and Laura is then taken to the hospital and the police, for which he even went to Q. Now Laura's husband found Simon cave. She says, how can this happen? Outside the cave, that's when I ran away. Hearing this, the police doctor nation. He also said that Simon might have some trouble with you. A relative. Hearing this, Laura and her husband thought of the tells the police doctor that she came to my house to talk about Simon and was lurking in the shed. But hearing this, the police doctor said, because there's no social worker by that name, but because Laura actually met him. So he thought that she had kidnapped Simon. And he was sure. Now Laura has to use a wheelchair because she injured her leg. In this situation, her husband tries to console Laura. He starts to comfort her and gives it to Laura, saying, you wear this and when I find Simon I'll take it back from you. Now while Laura was sleeping, in the middle of the night she was awakened by loud noises. This sound was coming from near Simon's room. To check, she noticed a doll lying. Now the scene shifts from here and comes after 6 months. And so both of them had lost hope that they would ever find Simon. But one day, where she met a social worker crossing the street holding a baby carriage. Looking at him, there was a hope that Simon son today. Laura calls out to him to talk to him, but a bus. Seeing this, screaming and crying and ran towards the bear. She that looks just like Thomas with a mask. Laura went to check on her. Her husband told her that she accident. The police bring some photos and reels for so that they can investigate. And it turns out the social worker she used to live in the house where they are living now. She says that the social worker also had a son named Thomas, and because her son's so he always wore a mask. The social worker also child from everyone. Now also shows Dr. Laura a newspaper in which mentioned. It was written about being, she says, Laura J. you were adopted as a child. After that some children took Thomas to the same cave, and after going inside the cave they saw Thomas had taken off the mask and she ran out because they wanted to see what she did without the mask. Will Thomas come out or not? Now those children had left from there, but Thomas remained inside and then went to the sea. High waves also came there and the poor fellow was not able to come out from there because water got into him too and he died by drowning. On this Laura says, how can this happen? Because I saw Thomas in my house the day Simon disappeared. On this the police doctor says that this cannot happen. Because Thomas is dead and this is also just his illusion. That same night, when Laura was lying on the bed, her husband also came and lay down beside her, with whom she started talking. She then becomes completely immersed in memories of her time spent with Simon. She tells these things to her husband also. But after some time, when Laura opens the door, her husband enters the room. I got scared after seeing this, that if he has come just now then who was with me on the bed. When she removed the sheet and looked, there was no one there, which made her scared. She also tells this to her husband, but both of them don't understand these strange things. Laura was deeply upset because of this and because Simon had been missing for 9 months. So she goes to a professor who is a psychologist. She tells them everything that happened to Simon after he disappeared. She even gives them a piece of the mass of Thomas, which he got when he pushed Laura. After listening to all his talk, the professor tells him to go to a medium. That is, a paranormal investigator who investigates these strange things, ghosts and spirits. And she talks to the ghosts and drives them away. The very next day the medium returns with her. She comes to Laura's house fully prepared and sits in a dark room and looks at all the details of the house. She tries to connect with the spirits and talk to them while the rest of them are in another room. We're watching the medium through cameras where the medium was checking the entire orphanage. She enters a room where she hears the voices of 5 orphan children speaking to a medium. She was crying and asking for a favor. It looked like he was in a very bad condition. The rest of the people sitting in the other room were also able to hear the cries of the children through the audio machine. Now on the professor's instructions, when the medium asks those children to come to Simon. When she asks about it, all the machines suddenly lose power. The machines shut down and the process is stopped here. Then when all these people gathered, the medium Laura, I apologize, I couldn't find Simon. She also says that those who are about to die, or people who are close to death, can see spirits. Hearing this, Laura became thoughtful. He thought that Simon was also sick, so maybe because of that he was able to see those spirits. Laura Caseband became angry upon hearing those whom he called his invisible friends. He calls all this useless drama and asks the professor and everyone else to leave his house. While leaving, the medium tells Laura that you are a mother and the love you have for your child is what keeps you looking for Simon. You just have to pay attention to everything and notice even the smallest things. Now Laura comes back to the same room, where the medium heard the sound of children crying and then the window broke and fell on the bench below. When Laura checks the bench, she finds some dolls lying there. Also a photo of Simon. It seemed as if these things were also close here. Is placed on the table and she remembers the game. From this Laura understood that now those spirits are playing treasure hunt game with me. Through the close he finds a doorknob. When he checked the whole house he could not find a single door without a door. Laura then comes in and checks the shirt, where she finds the social worker's locket. Then she remembered that day she too had come here to look for something. Laura breaks the doors of the small chambers there and takes out the bags of cement. But when he opened them, he was shocked. Because among them come the corpses of 5 of his friends, with whom Laura lived in this orphanage. These were the kids who went to the cave with Thomas and did all that. In fact, from that day onwards, social workers have been taking care of those children. Wanted to avenge the death of her son Thomas. He mixed poison in the food of those children and finally killed them. Then they put them in these sacks and put them here, and because Laura reopened the orphanage. So the social worker came here to remove these sacks so that no one else could know about this. Now Laura tries to explain all these things to her husband too. But he was not ready to listen and talked about leaving this orphanage. On this Laura takes 2 days time from him, saying that I want to stay here alone with my family. After her husband left, she started changing the whole setting of the house, even removing the furniture. The old one was kept and given the same look as this orphanage would have looked 30 years ago. Then she puts on the orphanage worker's uniform and places food on the dining table. And after making her friend Nagar dolls sit on the chairs, she herself sits there and then she sits on the same. She starts calling the spirits of her friends by knocking on the door, but when it takes too long. When she doesn't come, Laura starts playing a game she used to play as a child with her friends. Used to play in this orphanage. As soon as the game is played, the souls of those children come there. But when she asks him about Simon. So the children started running away from there to play hide and seek. While looking for a friend, Laura comes across a small room, where a lot of stuff was lying around. On checking this room, Laura saw a secret door there. And it was this door without a knob, and when you opened it, there was a basement inside. Then Laura comes down and starts checking. He finds several drawings by Thomas on the wall, from which it becomes clear that he used to live in this basement. Checking a board, he finds Simon's corpse dressed in Thomas's clothes. Laura was shocked to see this. She was completely shattered. She seemed to have gone mad. Sitting beside him, she starts crying bitterly, because he missed something, a mistake he regrets. In fact, the boy at mass that day, whom Laura had thought to be Thomas, was actually Simon. When Laura refused to go to Thomas's house and Simon I had slapped him, so he got angry and came to this basement. Everybody was looking for him and didn't know where he had gone, so he was in this basement. Now here Laura had made a mistake that when she went to look into this small room. When she came, she had no idea that there could be a secret basement here. He ignored this door. While setting up large pipes, she accidentally falls in front of the basement door, which blocked the door, from where poor Simon could not come out. And after returning from the hospital, when Laura, loud noises were being heard in the house, and it was none other than Simon's, who was trying to come out of the basement and accidentally slipped his foot and fell down the stairs. He fell down and broke his neck, and the poor guy died. Now Laura, she takes Simon's corpse out from there and brings it to her room, holding Simon in her lap. She was holding him. She takes a lot of sleeping pills and takes her last breath, i.e. she was also killed, and shortly thereafter we see Laura in the spirit world, where, after death, people go to the afterlife where Simon is in their lap. Along with that, there are the spirits of Thomas and the 5 orphan children. Now that day when Simon, when he found secrets in the treasure hunt game, he wished for his mother Laura. That means that after his death, Laura too should die and come to him here, and he and Simon, after she can take care of the rest of the children, the souls of all the children come to Laura. And she starts telling stories to those children, playing the role of a mother, after which we meet Laura. We see the husband of Laura, Simon Thomas, and the rest of the children at the orphanage had buried their bodies, performed their funeral, and he kept opening their graves. And when he comes back to the apartment, he finds the same chain which he had given to Laura and says, "I thought that once I find our child, I will take it back from you." Then the front door opened by itself, and I looked in front and got my chain back. A relieved smile came on his face because he understood that Laura has finally found Simon, because meeting Chan was a sign of this. And now Laura and Simon are both very happy together, and with this the film ends.